There's a certain ache that comes with being alone. Not the kind you can pinpoint in your body, but something quieter, deeper, almost existential. It feels off, like life has taken a strange turn, like you've been left behind in a world filled with people. And in the stillness, a question begins to echo. Why me? But what if this moment, this stretch of solitude, isn't a mistake or a punishment? What if it's part of something necessary, something meaningful? Carl Jung, one of the most profound minds in psychology, didn't see isolation as something to fear. He saw it as sacred, a space for real transformation. He believed those who are meant to grow deeply, to touch something more essential, must first learn to be alone. Not because they are forgotten, but because the noise of the world would only drown out what they need to hear. Yes, loneliness can feel like abandonment, like everyone else is moving forward while you're stuck, still unseen, unheard. But solitude isn't always a sign of being left out. Sometimes it's life calling you inward. Think of the ones who shaped history, not in noise, but in silence. The Buddha beneath the Bodhi tree, Jesus in the desert, Jung riding into the depths of his own unconscious. These weren't escapes. They were confrontations, moments where comfort gave way to truth, where identity was stripped down to make room for something real. Transformation doesn't bloom in comfort. It rises from the quiet, from the still ground of discomfort, from being face to face with what's inside. So if you find yourself alone, pause before labeling it as failure. Maybe you're not being forgotten. Maybe you're being prepared. Not everyone will make it through that silence. Many will turn away, chasing noise just to avoid what they might find. But if you can stay, if you can face yourself, you may begin to see that this solitude was never meant to break you. It was meant to reveal you. Because in the mirror of stillness, your truest self begins to take shape. And all it asks is that you don't look away. When the world goes quiet, the thoughts you've buried begin to rise. Old insecurities grow louder. Regrets you thought were long gone resurface, like ghosts from a forgotten past. It can feel overwhelming, like you're drowning in your own mind. That's the moment when most people run, back to distractions, to screens, to noise, to anything that keeps them from sitting with what they've been avoiding. But the few who choose to stay, who brave the silence, they begin a different kind of journey. Carl Jung called it individuation. It's not about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who you've always been, beneath the roles, beneath the expectations, beneath the layers shaped by family, culture, and fear. Individuation is the path toward your truest self. And no, it's not comfortable. It's raw. It can break you open. But it's necessary. Most people live in fragments, pieces of them shaped by others, by what they were told to be, not by what they truly are. But when solitude takes away the noise, all that remains is you, unfiltered, unmasked. And that can be terrifying, but it can also be liberating. Because without the constant input from the world, your subconscious begins to speak, first in whispers, then in shouts. It's not punishment, it's purification. The pain you feel in isolation isn't meaningless, it's sacred. It burns through illusion. It clears space for something real to grow. But still, many people miss it. They run from the silence. They label it as failure. They believe they've been forgotten. And in that belief, they become bitter. Jung warned against this. He said, "Don't identify with your suffering. Pain may be your teacher, but it is not your identity. It's meant to guide you, not define you. The more you resist silence, the more it controls you. But when you surrender to it, when you sit with it, listen to it, something remarkable begins to happen. You start to hear your own voice again, the one beneath all the noise, the one that was always there, waiting. Those who emerge from solitude transformed, stronger, wiser, more grounded, are not the ones who fought the process. They are the ones who let it work through them. They use the quiet not to escape, but to remember, to unlearn who they were told to be, and reconnect with who they truly are. This is why solitude, though it may feel empty, is actually a sacred threshold. It's a rite of passage, a psychological wilderness. There are no signs, no applause, no map, just you and the truth. But that's the point, because only in that space can you begin to ask the real questions. Who am I beyond the roles I play? What do I believe apart from what I was taught? What do I truly want? Not just to survive, but to live with meaning. Jung believed that in silence, the unconscious mind becomes more visible, a reservoir of instinct, memory, desire, and insight. And when the noise fades, you finally hear what it's been trying to tell you all along. In the quiet, something begins to stir. The unconscious doesn't speak in words. It speaks in feelings, in dreams, in memories you thought you'd forgotten, in sudden insights that seem to rise from nowhere. These aren't coincidences. They're messages, whispers from the deeper parts of you. But we live in a world that doesn't make space for that. We're told to keep moving, to stay busy, to avoid the discomfort of stillness. Yet true transformation requires the opposite. You have to pause. You have to feel. You have to listen, even when what you hear unsettles you. This is the quiet alchemy of solitude, the slow, invisible process of turning silence into selfhood. It's not sudden. It doesn't come in a flash of light or a single moment of clarity. It unfolds gradually, like a seed beneath the soil. First, there's darkness, then pressure. Then, something begins to move. Something begins to grow. But it only happens if you allow it. If you resist the silence, if you numb it, escape it, you stay stuck. Repeating old patterns, clinging to old identities, avoiding the truth of who you are. This is where Carl Jung's idea of shadow work comes in. The shadow is everything we hide from, the traits we reject, the emotions we bury, the truths we don't want to admit. And those parts don't just disappear. They wait. And when you enter solitude, they rise. You may feel anger you didn't know you carried, grief you never gave yourself permission to feel, fear, envy, guilt, the whole spectrum of what's been hidden. It can be overwhelming. But Jung believed the path to wholeness lies here, in facing those parts, in integrating them rather than pushing them away. Solitude, then, becomes the space where this work happens. It's not always graceful, but it's real, it's honest, and it's powerful. You begin to reclaim the pieces of yourself, not all at once, but slowly, with intention. We're taught that happiness means avoiding pain, but Jung saw it differently. Real peace comes not from escape, but from understanding. When you can sit with your pain, really sit with it, and hear what it's trying to tell you, you stop being controlled by it. And something else begins to appear. Clarity. You start to see the relationships that were built on fear, the ways you've abandoned yourself to keep others comfortable, the roles you've played just to be accepted. And as all that falls away, you begin to return, not to the person the world expected you to be, but to the person you've always been, quietly waiting underneath it all. This is the kind of freedom solitude offers. Not the freedom to escape life, but the freedom to live it as your truest self. Solitude doesn't offer its gifts quickly or easily, but when it does, it offers them honestly. In the quiet, you might start to notice things you'd forgotten. A passion that once lit you up before the world told you to be practical. A voice inside, not the wounded child, but the curious, creative one, whispering again. Dreams you once tucked away may resurface. And for the first time in a long time, they don't feel impossible. They feel necessary. The truth is, most people never reach this depth. They stay on the surface, filling every quiet moment with noise, mistaking solitude for loneliness. And in doing so, they miss the treasure that lies just beneath the discomfort. But if you found yourself in a season of solitude, even if it wasn't your choice, maybe life is offering you more than comfort. Maybe it's offering you clarity, maybe even truth. And truth, it isn't always gentle. It can cut. It can shake you. It asks you to change. But it also frees you. It clears away what's false so you can begin to live from what's real. That's why those who truly move through solitude often come out changed. Not louder, not more visible, but steadier, grounded, unshakable. They're not chasing approval anymore because they've learned to trust themselves. They've stopped fearing being misunderstood. They've found something better than fitting in. They've found their real voice. Solitude, at its core, is a return. Not a punishment, not isolation, but a coming home to yourself. Still, it's not handed to you. You have to earn it. You sit through long nights when the silence feels heavy. You face your own thoughts. You feel the weight of your own emotions, grief, anger, confusion, and you don't run. And somewhere in all that breaking down, something begins to build. A clearer you, a stronger you. Carl Jung once said, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls. But those who do, honestly, repeatedly, with humility, become something rare in this world. Whole. So if you're in solitude now, don't rush to fill it. Don't drown it out. Let it be. Breathe. Listen. Wait. What feels like emptiness may be fertile ground. What feels like silence may be an invitation. Not to be anyone else, just to be you. There's a fire in solitude, but it's not there to destroy you. It's there to refine you. And when all the distractions are gone, the roles you played, the noise you clung to, something quiet and real remains. You, not the curated version, not the one molded to please others, but the deeper, truer self that's been waiting for space to exist. Jung believed this wasn't a detour from life, but the very heart of it. Life will push you, again and again, to face your own depths, your dreams, fears, instincts, and forgotten truths. And the door to that world doesn't open in noise. It opens in silence, in solitude, in those moments when the world goes quiet and you feel forgotten. That's when something sacred is closest. It might not feel like a gift at first. It may feel like grief. But beneath the ache lies an invitation, an opening to become more whole, more honest, more aligned with who you truly are. We often view isolation through a narrow lens. It's framed as a lack of connection, of belonging. But solitude, especially the kind that arrives uninvited, is often the beginning of an inner rite of passage. It's something the soul understands, even if the ego resists. Think of the seasons. No one questions winter. Everything appears still, even lifeless, yet underground. Roots grow deeper, preparing for renewal. Your solitude is no different. On the surface, it may feel like nothing is happening, but internally, something essential is taking shape. This is why spiritual traditions around the world, from Buddhism to Christian mysticism to Sufism, honor periods of retreat and stillness. In silence, the soul remembers its way home. But solitude is not a passive state. It asks something of you. It calls you to listen, to what you've ignored, to feel what you've pushed away, to meet your discomfort not as a victim, but as someone willing to learn. And in that space, something begins to shift. The parts of you you once avoided, your fear, your regrets, your perceived flaws, begin to soften. They stop feeling like enemies and start revealing themselves as guides. This is the heart of Jung's concept of individuation, the process of becoming whole by integrating every part of yourself, even the ones you've long kept in the dark. The goal is not to be perfect, it's to be unified, to stand in the middle of your contradictions and say, "This is me, whole, unhidden." And that kind of self-acceptance rarely arrives in a crowd. It asks for space. It asks for solitude. It asks for fire. We live in a culture that tells us to flee discomfort, to fix pain quickly, quietly, and cleanly. But true healing, the kind that reshapes your inner life, is rarely neat. It's layered with grief, with anger, with unexpected grace. It cannot be rushed. It must be honored. And that's what solitude teaches. If you're willing to listen, patience, presence, becoming. In solitude, something shifts. Time slows. You're no longer racing through your days, checking boxes, chasing approval. Instead, you begin to notice your breath, your thoughts, the quiet flickers of emotion you usually miss. You start to realize just how much noise you've been living with. And for the first time in a long time, you experience what it's like to simply be with yourself. This presence, this stillness, is the ground where transformation begins. In this quiet, you start to forgive, not just others, but yourself. You begin to release the old stories. I'm not enough. I'm too broken. No one will ever truly see me. Those narratives begin to dissolve when you sit with them long enough to see through them. And something else happens. You begin to dream again. Not just about success or status, but about meaning. You ask bigger questions. What does a meaningful life look like? For me? What kind of energy do I want to bring into the world? Who am I when no one's watching? In answering these questions, you begin to rewrite your life. Not from pressure, but from truth. Your truth. Solitude becomes a homecoming, a remembering of what matters, a chance to realign with what feels real, not just what looks good. But make no mistake, this is sacred work, and it's not always easy. That's why many people run from it. They fill their time with noise, their hearts with shallow connections, their minds with constant distraction. But some choose differently. They stop running. They sit in the stillness. They face the discomfort. And over time, they change. Not because they avoided the pain, but because they walked through it, with eyes open, with heart open. They become something rare. Not flawless, not untouched by sorrow, but steady, rooted, free. This is the quiet power of solitude. Not a punishment, but a passage. A stripping away of the false. A deep remembering of the soul. And once you've walked through it, you carry the wisdom of fire. You become a lighthouse. Steady, quiet, and unmistakably alive. Then one day, without fanfare, you notice something different. The silence, once heavy, now feels sacred. The loneliness, once painful, now feels like peace. You've changed. And now comes the next step, bringing that inner transformation back into the world. Not returning to the old, but meeting life as someone new. Because you don't go back. You move forward with clarity, with depth, and with the quiet strength of someone who has come home to themselves. Carl Jung understood this phase deeply. He believed that individuation, the process of becoming your whole, authentic self, isn't truly complete until you return to the world with that truth. Inner transformation that stays locked inside your mind or heart isn't enough. It has to be lived. And that's not always easy. When you've done the inner work, your values often shift. What once excited you may now feel empty. Relationships you held on to may feel misaligned. Activities that once filled your calendar might seem pointless. Instead, you start craving depth, honesty, and purpose. At first, this can feel unsettling. You may not recognize your own life. People around you may sense the change. Some will support it. Others may resist, wanting you to return to who you were. But here's what you must remember. Your growth is real, and it matters. You don't owe anyone the version of yourself you've outgrown. Returning from solitude isn't about blending back in. It's about showing up with honesty and integrity. That doesn't mean you need to announce your transformation. Often, the deepest shifts are quiet. They're reflected more in how you live than in what you say. You move with more purpose. You speak less, but your words carry weight. You choose relationships from a place of alignment, not fear. You say no, not from defensiveness, but because your boundaries now matter. You no longer betray yourself for the comfort of others. You've learned to stand beside yourself, and that loyalty is powerful. This inner strength isn't loud. It doesn't need to be, but it's unmistakable. People feel it. In your presence, you're calm. The way you hold space without losing yourself. And gradually, your outer world begins to reflect your inner reality. New relationships form, not based on performance or pleasing, but on mutual respect. New opportunities arise, ones that match your values, not all at once and not without challenges, but steadily. And when life tests you, you respond differently. You're not as shaken by discomfort. You've met your shadow. You've made peace with solitude. You know how to come back to yourself. That's your anchor. Solitude, in many ways, teaches you how to be your own home. And when you carry that groundedness, the world can't throw you off course in the same way. Rejection stings less. Failure feels like learning, not judgment. Silence no longer scares you. You've learned how to listen within it. But maybe the most powerful part of returning from solitude is this. You carry something the world needs. Presence. In a world addicted to noise, speed, and surface-level connection, someone who's been shaped by solitude offers a rare kind of calm. You're no longer trying to impress. You're just being, and that alone changes things. You're no longer chasing approval. You're no longer trying to prove your worth, because somewhere in the quiet, you discovered it for yourself. Alone, in the stillness, something shifted. And now, that presence you found becomes a quiet gift. You begin to notice the subtle pain in others, even when it's hidden behind smiles or silence. You start listening differently, not waiting for your turn to speak, but really hearing them. You ask slower, deeper questions. You don't rush to fix or advise. You offer space. And in doing so, you become a quiet mirror, reflecting back the truth that they too have an inner world worth listening to. This is how solitude turns into service. Not through words or lessons, but through how you show up. Your stillness begins to soothe. Your truth becomes a quiet light. And without meaning to, you give others permission to pause, to go inward, to begin their own healing. But even as you hold space for others, you don't forget your own. You return to solitude often, not out of loneliness, but reverence. It becomes your sanctuary, your place to recalibrate when the world gets loud again. Because growth isn't a destination. The journey inward never really ends. There will always be more to discover, more to let go of, more to reclaim. But now you walk it with clarity. You've faced the fire and made it through. You've sat with the silence and listened to what your soul had to say. That memory lives in you now, a compass always pointing you home. Carl Jung once said, "Your vision will become clear only when you look into your heart. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakens." And now you are awake, not in some dramatic, cinematic way, but in a grounded, steady way. You know what peace feels like, because you earned it. You understand self-respect, because you built it. And you know how to stand alone, not because you have to, but because you've learned you can. So now you move through the world differently, not disconnected, but not lost in it either. You carry your solitude with you, not as a scar, but as a source of quiet wisdom. You belong to yourself now, and from that place, everything shifts. Because the gift of solitude was never about escape. It was about embodiment, a return, a remembering that you were never broken, never behind, never forgotten. You were only being shaped, gently, deeply, into who you were always meant to be. And now, you're ready, not to go back, but to move forward, as the person you've become.